I break what tried to break me.
They say you never see the knockout punch coming. Well, I sure as hell didn't see this one. There I was, sitting in our mahogany boardroom at Sterling Ventures, the same room where Rachel and I used to dream about changing the world back when we were broke 20-somethings with nothing but ambition and instant coffee. Now, 14 years later, that same room felt like a goddamn courtroom, and I was about to get sentenced. I'm David, 42, and for the past 13 years I've been married to Rachel, who also happened to be my business partner and the CEO of the investment firm we built from scratch. We started Sterling when we were both 25, working out of a cramped studio apartment with secondhand furniture and a dream. I was co-founder and chief strategy officer. Rachel was CEO. Our daughter Lily came along when the company really started exploding, and for years it felt like we'd figured out how to have it all. Then everything went to absolute crap. The morning started normal enough. I grabbed my usual black coffee from the lobby cafe, exchanged pleasantries with Janet at reception, and walked through the glass doors of the company we'd built together. The nameplate on my office door still read, Co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer. But hell, those were just words on brass at this point. I should have known something was wrong when I walked into the boardroom and saw all 13 department heads already seated. Usually, our quarterly strategy meetings were just Rachel, myself, and maybe 2 senior staff. But today, every single person who mattered at Sterling was there, sitting around that polished table like they were waiting for a show to start. Rachel stood at the head of the table in her power suit, the charcoal gray one that made her look like she could freeze hell with a glance. Her auburn hair was pulled back in that severe bun she'd started wearing ever since she decided being CEO meant looking intimidating. But it was the smirk on her face that should have been my first real warning. And there, right beside her like some designer accessory, was Blake, 23 years old, fresh out of Wharton, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a jawline that probably cost his daddy a fortune. Strategic advisor, my A. Everyone in that room knew exactly what kind of advising he was doing. Thanks for joining us, Rachel said, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she used when she was about to drop a bomb. I know this is unusual, calling everyone together like this, but I felt it was important that our entire leadership team witness this conversation. Witness, not participate, not contribute, witness. We need to discuss your compensation package, she continued, walking slowly around the table like she was giving a lecture. The board has been reviewing performance metrics, and frankly, we're not seeing the return on investment we need from your current role. The room got so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. I glanced around at faces I'd known for years, people I'd hired, mentored, fought alongside when we were scrambling for our first major contract. Now they were all staring anywhere but at me. What exactly are you proposing? I asked, keeping my voice level. That's when she did it. Rachel reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She walked over to where I was sitting, looked me dead in the eye, and then, I swear to God, she spit right in my face. A deliberate, calculated glob of spit that landed on my left cheek and started dripping toward my collar. The entire room collectively held its breath. I could feel 13 pairs of eyes watching to see how I'd react. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my handkerchief, the navy blue one with my initials that Rachel had given me for our 5th anniversary, and calmly wiped my face. She slid the paper across the polished table. Accept the 90% salary reduction or I'll find someone who will, she said, her voice carrying just enough volume for everyone to hear clearly. You've got until tomorrow morning to decide. 90%, from $265,000 a year down to $26,500. That wasn't a salary cut. That was a humiliation ritual. That was her way of saying I was worth less than the kid who delivered our lunch orders. I unfolded the paper and read through the terms. It was all legal and proper, signed by the board, witnessed by the company attorney. Everything by the book, except for the part where my own wife had just treated me like something she'd scrape off her shoe in front of our entire executive team. Blake was practically glowing beside her, that smug little smile playing at the corners of his mouth like he was watching his favorite movie. This wasn't just about money or business strategy. This was personal. This was Rachel making sure everyone in that room knew exactly where I stood in the new hierarchy. I need 24 hours, I said quietly, folding the paper and slipping it into my jacket pocket. 24 hours, she agreed. Not a minute more. I stood up, straightened my tie, and looked around the room one more time. These people, Janet from HR, Martinez from operations, Susan from marketing. They'd all worked with me for years. Some of them owed their careers to recommendations I'd made. Now they couldn't even make eye contact. I walked out of that boardroom with my head high and my back straight, just like my father taught me when I was 8 years old. Never let them see you break. Save that for when you're alone. But I wasn't thinking about crying or breaking down. As I walked past Janet's desk and through those glass doors, I felt something else entirely. Something had shifted inside me, like a gear clicking into place after years of grinding against nothing. That wasn't just disrespect back there. That was a declaration of war. I sat in my car in the parking garage for what felt like hours after walking out of that boardroom. The engine was off, but I couldn't bring myself to turn the key and drive anywhere that mattered. Home felt like enemy territory now, and the office wasn't mine anymore either. So I just sat there like some pathetic statue, staring at the concrete wall in front of me, and trying to figure out what the hell had just happened to my life. My phone buzzed with texts I didn't want to read. Probably Rachel wondering where I was. Probably her lawyer wanting to discuss next steps. Probably someone wanting to twist the knife a little deeper. I turned the damn thing off and shoved it in the glove compartment like it might bite me. When I finally started the car, I had no destination in mind. I just drove through downtown, past the coffee shop where Rachel and I used to meet before we were married, past the park where we'd take Lily when she was little and still thought her daddy hung the moon. Every street held some memory of better times, back when we were a team instead of whatever the hell we'd become. I ended up on the interstate just following the flow of traffic like a piece of driftwood caught in a current. The sun was setting, painting the sky all orange and pink, the kind of sunset that used to make me feel grateful for the life I'd built. Now it just looked like the world was on fire. 3 hours later, I pulled into the parking lot of some 24-hour truck stop diner off Route 53, the kind of place that's seen better decades, where the coffee's strong enough to wake the dead and nobody asks too many questions about why you're eating pie at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The neon sign flickered Rose's Diner in letters that had probably been bright red sometime back when Clinton was president. Inside, the place was exactly what you'd expect. Cracked vinyl booths, checkerboard linoleum that had seen a million spilled cups of coffee, and the persistent smell of bacon grease that had soaked into every surface. There were maybe 6 other customers scattered around, a trucker working on a plate of meatloaf, 2 college kids sharing a basket of fries, and an old guy at the counter nursing what looked like his 10th cup of coffee. I slid into a corner booth and tried to blend into the scenery. The waitress came over after a few minutes. A woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her name tag said Dorothy. "What can I get you, hon?" she asked. And something about the way she said hon hit me right in the chest. Not sarcastic, not condescending, just genuine warmth for a customer she'd never seen before and would probably never see again. "Just coffee," I said. "Black." "You sure? Kitchen's still open. Rose makes a mean apple pie." Something about her warm smile made me reconsider. "You know what? Yeah, pie sounds good." She brought the coffee first, hot, strong, served in one of those thick white mugs that probably weighed half a pound empty. Then came the pie, a generous slice with flaky crust and apples that actually tasted like they'd been picked from a tree instead of processed in some factory. "This is really good," I told her when she came by to refill my cup. "Don't sound so surprised," she laughed. "Rose has been making that same pie for 28 years. Figure she's got it down by now." It was the first genuine conversation I'd had in weeks. Not some calculated business exchange or careful navigation around Rachel's increasingly hostile territory. Just 2 people talking about pie like it was the most natural thing in the world. I ended up staying there until almost 2 a.m., nursing coffee and picking at that slice while my mind wandered through the wreckage of the day. Dorothy checked on me every so often, never pushy, never trying to get me to order more or hurry up and leave. She just let me exist in that little bubble of normalcy, while the rest of my world felt like it was collapsing around me. Around 1:30, she brought me fresh coffee without being asked, and sat down across from me for a minute during the late-night lull. Around 1:30, she brought me fresh coffee without being asked, and sat down across from me during the late-night lull. "Rough day?" she asked. "You could say that. Want to talk about it?" I considered it for a moment. Part of me wanted to spill the whole damn story to this stranger who had no stake in my drama, but instead, I just shook my head. Not much to say. Just one of those days when you realize the person you thought had your back was actually holding the knife. Dorothy nodded like she understood exactly what I meant. "Been there," she said simply. "The good news is tomorrow's a new day. Things look different in morning light sometimes." When I finally left Rose's diner, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, like I was still a human being worth treating with basic decency. Dorothy had called me hun and meant it. For 3 hours, I'd been just another customer, not a liability to be managed or an obstacle to be removed. I drove home in the early morning darkness, but I didn't go inside. Instead, I sat in my driveway, looking at the house Rachel and I had bought 7 years ago when Sterling first started turning real profit. The windows were dark, everyone asleep, but I knew I couldn't just walk back into that house and pretend nothing had changed. Rachel had made her choice, drawn her battle lines. The question was, what was I going to do about it? That night, sitting in my driveway at 3 a.m., I made my first real decision since this nightmare started. I wasn't going to fight back loud and messy. I was going to rise quiet and deadly. 3 in the morning. That's when desperation and clarity tend to collide in a way that changes everything. I was still in my driveway, engine off, staring at the dark windows of what used to feel like home. The house looked peaceful enough. White colonial with black shutters, perfectly manicured lawn that our landscaper Miguel kept pristine. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. From the inside, we were more like a slow-motion car crash. I retrieved my phone from the glove compartment and scrolled through missed calls and texts. 3 from Rachel, all variations of "Where are you?" and "We need to talk." 2 from my attorney, probably wanting to discuss the legal implications of that document she'd slid across the table. And 1 from a number I didn't recognize, which I ignored. But then I stopped scrolling and stared at a contact I hadn't called in over 18 months. Trevor Martinez? I hadn't thought about him in weeks, but suddenly his name felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Trevor and I had history, the good kind. I'd hired him as a junior analyst 5 years back when he was fresh out of Northwestern, all eager energy and raw talent. Kid was sharp as a tack, could see patterns in data that most seasoned professionals missed. I'd taken him under my wing, taught him how to read between the lines in financial reports, how to spot opportunities that others walked right past. When Apex Industries tried to poach him 3 years ago with a VP of operations offer, I'd been proud as hell. I'd written his recommendation letter myself, told their CEO that Trevor was the kind of leader you build a company around. He'd called me before accepting, asking if I thought he should take it. "Hell yes," I'd told him. "You're ready for this. Go show them what you're made of." And show them he did. Under Trevor's leadership, Apex had grown from a mid-tier competitor to a serious threat in our space. They'd landed 4 major contracts that I knew Sterling had been chasing, including that massive telecommunications deal with Brennan Corp that Rachel was still pissed about losing. What made Trevor special wasn't just his analytical skills. It was his loyalty. The kid never forgot where he came from or who'd helped him get there. Every few months, he'd send me articles he thought I'd find interesting, industry insights, sometimes just a text asking how things were going. I'd always responded, kept that connection alive, even though we were technically competitors now. More importantly, I knew Apex had tried to recruit me twice, once about a year ago when they were expanding their strategic planning division, and again 4 months back when they were looking for someone to head their new West Coast operations. Both times they'd gone through Trevor as an intermediary, feeling out whether I'd be interested in a conversation. Both times I'd said no without even hearing the offer. Loyalty to Rachel, to Sterling, to the company we'd built together. What a damn joke that seemed like now. I stared at Trevor's name on my phone screen. 3 a.m. wasn't exactly normal business hours, but Trevor had always been a night owl back when he worked for me. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit call. 1 ring, 2 rings. I half expected voicemail, but on the 3rd ring, Trevor's familiar voice came through the speaker. "Well, well, well," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "If it isn't the master himself. Though I gotta say, 3 a.m. is a new record for you." "How'd you know it was me?" "I've had your number saved as the boss since the day I left Sterling. Plus, caller ID exists, old man." He chuckled, but there was warmth there. "What's got you calling at this ungodly hour? Please tell me you're finally ready to have that conversation we've been dancing around." That's when I knew Trevor had been waiting for this call. Smart man had probably seen the writing on the wall at Sterling before I'd been willing to admit it to myself. I was hoping this day would come. he continued when I didn't immediately respond. Not because I wanted to see you get screwed over, but because I knew eventually you'd realize what everyone else in this industry already knows. You're wasted at Sterling. You built that company, man, and then you let them turn you into middle management, while your wife plays CEO with some kid who probably still gets carded at restaurants. The fact that Trevor knew about Blake shouldn't have surprised me. Industry gossip traveled fast. So, Trevor continued, what finally broke the camel's back? I gave him the abbreviated version. The boardroom ambush, the salary reduction demand, the public humiliation. I left out the part about the spit. Some things were too personal to share. Jesus, Trevor said when I finished. That's cold, even for corporate warfare. Though, honestly, I'm surprised it took this long. Word on the street has been that you've been getting iced out for months. Word on the street? Come on, you know how this works. Vendors talk, clients gossip, employees jump ship and spill everything. Half the industry knows Rachel's been systematically undermining your authority since she started sleeping with the strategy advisor. There it was, laid out in stark terms. My professional reputation was already damaged goods, and I'd been too proud or too naive to see it happening. So, what do you want to do about it? Trevor asked. I looked up at the dark windows of my house, thought about Lily sleeping upstairs. She deserved better than watching her parents destroy each other. I want to remind Rachel what I'm actually worth, I said. Now you're talking. Can you meet me at 6 a.m.? 6 a.m. came faster than expected. I'd finally gone inside around 4, grabbed a shower, and put on my best suit. The charcoal Armani that Rachel had bought me for my 40th birthday, back when she still pretended to care about making me look successful. Apex Industries headquarters was everything Sterling wanted to be, but never quite achieved. Sleek glass and steel, rising 28 floors into the morning sky with a lobby that screamed success without being obnoxious about it. Trevor was waiting when the elevator doors opened, looking every inch the successful executive in his navy suit and crimson tie. He'd filled out since his analyst days, carried himself with the confidence that comes from knowing you're good at what you do. You look like hell, he said with a grin. Thanks. You look like a VP. Funny how that works. He gestured toward a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Come on, let's talk somewhere private. The conference room was impressive without being intimidating. Polished oak table, leather chairs, and a view that made you feel like you were on top of the world. Trevor closed the door and activated some kind of privacy screen that frosted the glass walls. Coffee? He asked, gesturing to a service cart that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. Black, strong enough to wake the dead. The coffee was perfect, rich, smooth, with just enough bite to remind you that you were alive. Everything at Apex seemed to be a subtle upgrade from what I was used to at Sterling. So, Trevor said, settling into his chair, before we dive into the fun stuff, I need to ask the obvious question. Are you actually free to have this conversation, or are we going to end up in some legal nightmare because of non-compete clauses? I couldn't help but laugh. You know what's funny? Rachel let my non-compete expire last year. Apparently, she was so confident I'd never leave, she didn't bother renewing it. Her lawyers are probably crapping themselves right about now. Trevor's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. You're telling me that the woman who just tried to cut your salary by 90% forgot to lock you down legally? Ironic, isn't it? The CEO, who's supposedly so much smarter than me, made a rookie mistake that any first-year law student would catch. Jesus Christ, Trevor muttered, shaking his head. It's like she wanted you to walk. He reached into a leather portfolio and pulled out a manila folder that looked suspiciously thick. Well, in that case, let's talk about your future. We've been watching your situation at Sterling for months, waiting for the right moment to approach you again. Yesterday's boardroom drama just accelerated our timeline. Trevor slid the folder across the table. Here's what we're prepared to offer. I opened it and felt my eyebrows climb toward my hairline. The title page read, Senior Director of Global Expansion, Compensation Package and Equity Structure. Below that was a salary figure that made my current pay look like pocket change. Triple your reduced salary, Trevor said, watching my face. Full authority over international development, your own team, and a benefits package that includes stock options tied to the contracts you bring in. I flipped through the pages. Health insurance that actually covered everything, 4 weeks paid vacation, and a performance bonus structure that could potentially double my base salary if I hit certain targets. It was everything I'd been trying to negotiate at Sterling for years. There's one more thing, Trevor said, pulling out another document. This is our non-compete agreement, standard 2-year term, but with a twist. It specifically exempts Sterling Ventures from the restricted company list. I looked up at him. Meaning? Meaning, if you want to go head-to-head with your ex-wife's company and steal every client she's got, we're not going to stop you. In fact, we're counting on it. The offer was everything I could have hoped for and more. Respect, autonomy, financial security, and the chance to prove that Rachel had made the biggest mistake of her professional life. I picked up the pen Trevor had placed beside the folder. Any questions? He asked. Just one. When do I start? How about Monday? I signed my name with a flourish, each letter feeling like a small act of rebellion. When I handed the document back to Trevor, he was grinning like a shark who'd just spotted a school of fish. Welcome to Apex Industries, he said. This is going to be fun. The next morning, I walked into Sterling wearing that navy blue suit Rachel and I had bought together when we were pitching our first major investors. Back then, it had been our lucky charm. Now it felt like battle armor. I walked past my office, former office, noting the nameplate was already gone. Rachel's door was closed, but I knocked once and entered without waiting. You're early, she said, glancing at her watch. I thought you'd need the full 24 hours to make such a difficult decision. Turns out it wasn't that difficult after all. I placed my resignation letter on her desk with the same deliberate precision she'd used with that salary reduction document. My resignation. She stared at the envelope for a long moment. Then she looked up at me with that calculating expression I'd learned to recognize over the years. Running away? She asked, leaning back in her chair with a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes. No, I replied. I'm stepping up. That's when I pulled out the signed offer letter from Apex Industries. I didn't hand it to her, just held it up so she could see the letterhead, the official seal. Her eyes widened as she processed what she was looking at. The smirk disappeared completely, replaced by something I hadn't seen on Rachel's face in years. Genuine shock. You can't, she said. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, her voice carried uncertainty. Actually, I can. You forgot something pretty important when you were planning your little boardroom coup yesterday. What are you talking about? My non-compete clause, the one you let expire last year because you were so confident I'd never have the balls to leave. The color drained from her face as the implications hit her. She grabbed her phone and started scrolling frantically, probably looking for her attorney's number. That's when the office door opened and Blake walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing that same smug expression. He was laughing about something, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. Morning, beautiful, he said to Rachel, then noticed me standing there. Oh, hey there, boss. Boss? The condescending little crap. Actually, I said, I was just leaving, permanently. I turned back to Rachel. You know what's funny? Yesterday you asked me to accept being worth $26,000 a year. Today someone else decided I'm worth triple what I was making here, with equity and full authority over a division that's going to directly compete with everything you've built. Blake's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. Wait, what's happening here? What's happening, I said, is that your girlfriend just learned the difference between a chess move and a checkers move. She thought she was being clever, but all she really did was remind me that I'm too good for this place. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back one more time. Oh, and Rachel, you might want to call Maria Santos at Brennan Corp. I have a feeling she's going to have some questions about the continuity of her account management now that the person who actually developed her expansion strategy won't be around to implement it. I could see panic starting to creep into her eyes as she realized this wasn't just about losing me. It was about losing everything I brought to the table. The relationships, the institutional knowledge, the client trust that couldn't be replaced with PowerPoint presentations and MBA buzzwords. You can't just walk away from everything we built together, Rachel said, and for a moment I heard an echo of the woman I'd married. We didn't build this together, I replied. I built it and you took it. There's a difference. News travels fast in the business world. My phone started buzzing before I even made it to my car. The first text came from Angela Rodriguez at Phoenix Motors. Heard through the grapevine you left Sterling. Call me when you get a chance. By the time I reached my car, I had 7 messages from various contacts in the industry. Word was already spreading that I'd walked away from the company I'd helped build, and people were reaching out. I hadn't contacted a single one of them, but somehow, within an hour, half my professional network knew I was available. That's when it hit me. Loyalty in this business doesn't follow companies or titles. It follows people. At Apex, Trevor assembled a small team to help with my transition. My former project manager, Robert Johnson, who'd left Sterling 6 months earlier after getting frustrated with Rachel's micromanagement style. He'd been working as a freelance consultant, but Trevor convinced him to come aboard full-time as my deputy director. "Man, I was hoping this day would come," Robert said when he walked into my new office. "Working for Rachel without you there as a buffer was like trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded." Next was Lisa Chen from the finance department, a brilliant analyst who'd been underutilized at her previous firm. Trevor had recruited her specifically to support my division, knowing that the kind of complex international expansion projects I specialized in required someone who could model financial scenarios across multiple currencies and regulatory environments. Finally, there was Marcus Torres, a creative director who'd been working on digital marketing strategies for tech startups. He was younger than the rest of us, probably fresh out of grad school, but his portfolio showed the kind of innovative thinking that could help us approach client challenges from angles our competitors wouldn't see coming. "So," Trevor said as we all gathered in the conference room for an impromptu strategy session, "what's our first move?" I looked around the table at these 4 talented professionals who'd chosen to bet their careers on my ability to deliver results. It was intimidating as hell, but also exhilarating in a way I hadn't felt in years. "We're going to do something Sterling never figured out how to do properly," I said. "We're going to focus on solving our clients' actual problems instead of just trying to upsell them on services they don't need." Within 2 weeks, we'd converted 4 major accounts from Sterling to Apex. Not through aggressive sales tactics or undercutting prices, but simply by demonstrating that we understood their businesses better than anyone else in the market. The first major loss for Sterling came through Maria Santos at Brennan Corp. She'd officially terminated her contract with Sterling and signed with Apex, bringing along a $3.2 million project that Rachel had been counting on to boost their quarterly numbers. But Maria didn't just take her business elsewhere. She started talking to other CEOs in her network about why she'd made the switch. "It's simple," she told anyone who'd listen. "I need partners who understand my industry, not consultants who treat every client like they're selling the same widget." Sterling used to have that kind of insight. Now they're just another cookie-cutter firm trying to apply generic solutions to specific problems. That kind of word-of-mouth poison spreads fast in our industry. Within weeks, 3 other clients had requested meetings to reassess their strategic partnerships, corporate speak for, "We're shopping around for someone better." David Chen from North Star Financial was next. His contract with Sterling was locked in for another 6 months, but he found a creative way around it by bringing Apex in as a secondary consultant on a new project that technically fell outside his existing agreement. The project was worth $2.1 million, and it was the kind of high-profile international expansion that would generate case studies and referrals for years to come. But the real damage wasn't just the money walking out the door. It was the reputation. In an industry built on relationships and trust, losing key clients sends a message that something's fundamentally wrong with your operation. Other potential clients start asking questions. Existing clients start wondering if they should be looking elsewhere. Staff members start updating their resumes. I heard about Sterling's quarterly earnings report through Trevor, who'd gotten the information from Peter Richardson, the chairman of Sterling's board. The numbers were brutal. Revenue down 22%, client retention at an all-time low, and profit margins that made their stock look like a penny stock waiting to happen. Peter Richardson, Sterling's board chairman, called me directly. "What did she do?" he asked without pleasantries. "She forgot where real value came from," I told him. The relationships that built those client connections can't just transfer to a new strategy advisor automatically. A week later came the announcement. Rachel Thompson was stepping down as CEO to pursue new opportunities. The board appointed their CFO as interim CEO while conducting a search for permanent leadership. I didn't celebrate. I just kept working on the Brennan Corp expansion project that was establishing Apex as a serious player in European markets. But I did send flowers to the interim CEO, white lilies with a card reading, "Focus on people, not headlines." The real victory wasn't Rachel's downfall. It was what I'd rebuilt. Within 6 months, my division at Apex had grown revenue 43%, client satisfaction scores hit all-time highs, and we had enough projects to keep us busy for 18 months. More importantly, I was finally present in my daughter Lily's life. No more coming home after she'd gone to bed or leaving before she woke up. When she drew our family for a school project, I was right there in the center. The first time I'd appeared in one of her drawings in months. "You're around again," she told me simply. "Like actually around, not just sleeping here sometimes." Out of the mouths of babes. A year later, I'm VP of Global Strategy at Apex, living in a house where my daughter is genuinely excited to see me come home, working with people I respect on projects that matter. Rachel resurfaced at some fintech startup, probably telling a 25-year-old CEO how brilliant he is. I stared at that news article for a moment, waiting for some emotional reaction, satisfaction, vindication, pity. But all I felt was completion, like closing a book I'd enjoyed but was ready to move on from. The best payback isn't revenge, it's peace. The best revenge isn't loud, it's freedom. And the best decision I ever made was walking away. Sometimes the best thing that can happen is being forced to leave something you thought you couldn't live without. Because only then do you discover what you actually can't live without, and what kind of life you want to build when nobody else is dictating the terms.